The Roswell craze was launched anew in 1978, when investigators Stanton Friedman and Len Stringfield stumbled upon a little-known retired Army officer named Jesse Marcel. After 31 years, Marcel had finally decided to break his silence on the Roswell incident.
He tells me the story about being the intelligence officer at the base here in Roswell, getting a call from the sheriff's office, going out with the counterintelligence corps man, with the rancher who would come in with pieces of this weird stuff, following them out because there's no way to tell anybody where that debris field is, and seeing all this stuff strewn out of an area 3/4 of a mile long, a few hundred feet wide.
One thing I was certain of, being familiar with all air activities, that it was not a weather balloon, nor an aircraft, nor a missile. It was something else of which we didn't know what it was. They were just fragments strewn all over the area, so we proceeded to pick up the parts. A lot of it had a lot of little members with symbols that, to me, I call them hieroglyphics because I could not interpret them, could not be read. They were just like symbols of something that meant something. These little members could not be broken, could not be burned. I even tried to burn that, would not burn. See, that stuff weighs nothing. It's not any thicker than tinfoil in a pack of cigarettes.
Yeah, my dad never changed the story. He was convinced this came from some other place, though, meaning another solar system. He never divulged what he thought it was, except, well, the flying saucer thing, whatever that meant.
By the time Marcel went public with his story in 1978, many of the key witnesses in the Roswell mystery had long since passed away. Rancher W.W. Mac Brazel, the man who led Marcel to the debris field, died in 1963. Despite Brazel's death, his story lived on, thanks in large part to other witnesses, like Frank Joyce. In the late 1970s, Joyce first elaborated on Mac Brazel's role in the Roswell incident. Joyce told investigators that within a day or two of Brazel finding the wreckage, the rancher changed his story after being detained by the military for several days.
He comes into the station and he said, "We've discovered that this was a weather balloon." He said, "I was told to come and tell you this story or it would go hard with me," meaning him, and then I advised him that they couldn't tell him what to do, that nobody is going to be able to put pressure on him. And after making my little speech, again in that very quiet voice, Brazel says, "I'm not so sure of that."
Joyce also claims that the cowboy found more than space-age debris out in the desert. The retired newsman says that Brazel saw dead alien bodies.
I said this, he didn't. Little green men. And without me saying another word comes the quiet voice from the corner, "They weren't green." So that was the first time that he really shook me on, hey, those bodies he's talking about must have been there.
The question of alien bodies has fascinated Roswell investigators for years. Based upon his research, Tom Carey speculates that alien bodies were found 2.5 miles from the debris field and at an impact site some 20 miles away.
We're talking up to 8 bodies that we believe were involved in the crash. We also have testimony from a number of people that at least one was alive, perhaps 2, when the military got here.
There are no known living witnesses who claim to have seen the bodies with their own eyes. Most of the testimony collected by investigators comes via second-hand witnesses, like Roswell mortician Glenn Dennis. Dennis says he learned about the alien bodies when he ran into an Army nurse that he knew. She was hysterical and told him she had just been forced to assist in an alien autopsy.
What they wanted her to do was to write down what they were examining, and said there was a trash bag that was open with 2 very mutilated small bodies that looked like kind of ancient Chinese. On another gurney, there was the limbs and everything were severed, but the torso, they would take a forceps and turn overhand, and they would describe so many centimeters, four fingers, little pads, looked like little pads with little miniature suction cups. The heads were very large, pliable like newborn children, and their eyes were very large.
Dennis claimed that while at the base, his life was threatened by an officer.
There was another captain standing there, and he came up and he tapped me on the shoulder and he said, don't go in and start a bunch of rumors. So I didn't like his attitude, and I said, I'm a civilian, you can't do anything to me, you can go to hell. And that's when he really punched me a little bit, and he said, somebody will be picking your bones out of the sand if you do.
There are other Roswell citizens who recall eerily similar events. Today, Pete and Mary Anaya are fixtures in New Mexico Democratic politics. But in July of 1947, they were a young working-class couple in Roswell. At the time, Anaya was a cook at the base. He says his good friend Joseph Montoya, then Lieutenant Governor of New Mexico, also saw the alien corpses.
My brother used to know him real good, and so did me. He came down one time to campaign for Lieutenant Governor. So he told me and Ruben to take him to the base. He came out and he told us he saw 3 little men, the head was that big. And then he said they were funny-looking bodies. He didn't want to talk no more. He was really, really, really upset.
Anaya says that Montoya was so shaken up that he asked to go to his house for a drink. Anaya's wife Mary was the next person to hear the Lieutenant Governor's tale of dead aliens.
He took some drinks, and, I mean, not only one or two, it was quite a bit. He was pretty shaken. We wanted to know more, because I didn't want to believe that, at the first, I didn't want to believe that they had seen little people.
Once he calmed down, Montoya refused to discuss the matter in public ever again. Like Glenn Dennis, Anaya says his and his brother's lives were later threatened. The sinister message was allegedly delivered from the airbase by Sheriff George Wilcox.
The sheriff came in and talked to me and him, and I told the sheriff what's going on. And then the sheriff told us, you better keep your mouth shut, because if you won't keep your mouth shut, you're going to get killed.
Perhaps the most compelling story about the alien bodies is attributed to the late Major Edwin Easley, who served as the Provost Marshal of Roswell Army Airfield in 1947. His youngest daughter, Nancy, a dig volunteer, tells of her father's reluctance to discuss the Roswell incident.
Whenever we would ask him about Roswell, he would simply tell us that he had promised President Truman that he would not talk about it. He kept his word. He wouldn't engage in these conversations until he was dying. He was already on high doses of morphine. My niece kept asking him, well, Pappy, what did you see out there? What'd you see? What'd you see? And finally he said, creatures.
At one point in a conversation, I said to him, are we following the right path? And he said, what do you mean? I said, we think it's extraterrestrial. And he said, well, let me put it this way, it's not the wrong path. I think Edwin Easley's testimony is important because it leads sort of to the bodies, it gives us a hint to the importance of military attached to it, and it gives us a lead about how important the administration thought it was.
A key to proving that bodies were actually recovered from the crash is to find the impact site itself. According to Kevin Randall, finding proof of bodies and the impact site will be a tall order for even the most seasoned investigator.
Unfortunately, some of the witnesses that we had put some trust in turned out not to be as credible as we had hoped for. We know that there was a second site, and there may have been a third or a fourth site, depending on how the thing broke up. But we just don't have someone who was standing on the site and could point, yes, it landed here, and the bodies were here, and this was there.
Don Schmidt and Tom Carey are determined to find the impact site. Today they'll take to the air in search of the final resting place of the ill-fated spacecraft.